Hello everyone. The article that we will be discussing today is The Silence Dialogue, Power and Pedagogy in Educating People's Children by Lisa Delpit. Some questions I would like you to think about before I go on is, what are some reasons students are unmotivated and disengaged from class and classwork? Please think about this outside of lacking the intelligence/potential capability for them to do it. Secondly, how can these identified reasons impact the student's grade and academic achievement? Finally, has a teacher ever questioned your intelligence or capability to learn? Please pause the video and take a few minutes to think about these or discuss with someone at your house. Okay, welcome back. So moving on, we're going to go through a brief overview, author's purpose, and theoretical orientation. Here's a brief overview of the article you should have read. Lisa Delpit uses the debate over process-orientated versus skills-orientated writing instruction as the starting off point to examine the culture of power that exists in society in general and in the educational environment in particular. She analyzes 5 complex rules of power that explicitly and implicitly influence the debate over meeting the educational needs of African American and poor students on all levels. Delpit acknowledges and explains that a school of thought exists in the public school system relating to the fact that non-white educators feel left out from the debate of how to teach children of color. She concludes that teachers must teach all students the explicit and implicit rules of power as a first step toward a more just society. The author's purpose is to give insight into what must be done to help teachers and students better understand each other. Delpit's theoretical orientation is conflict theory. Conflict theories are often applied to inequalities of gender, social class, education, race, and ethnicity. Conflict theorists examine power disparities and struggles between various racial and ethnic groups. Moving on, we have important concepts and ideas. The first concept is the 5 parts of power. First part, issues of power enacted in classrooms. If school prepares people for jobs and the kind of job a person has determines his or her economic status, then school is ultimately related to power. For example, force of instructor over understudies. This means that teachers have power over students. There is also the force of distributors of course books. This means that the people writing and distributing the course textbooks have the power over what is taught in the classroom. Second part of power. There is a culture of power. It means the codes people are speaking relate to linguistic forms, communicative strategies, and presentation of self. This basically states that the way people speak determines their power. For example, somatic structures, open techniques, the methods for talking, methods for composing, and so on. For example, in academic writing, if I were to write the way that I speak in text messages or with my friends, I would be seen as less intellectual and not be taken seriously. But writing through academic language will make me seem more intelligent and give me more credibility. Rule number 3. The rules of powerful people are the rules of the culture of power. Children from middle-class homes tend to be better in school than those from non-middle-class homes because the culture of the school is based on the culture of upper and middle classes. In this manner, accomplishment in school is an endless supply of the individuals who are in power. Number 4. Learning the explicit rules of that culture makes acquiring power easier. On the off chance that you are not, as of now, a member in the way of life of force, being told unequivocally the guidelines of the culture makes obtaining power less demanding. When implicit codes are attempted to cross-culture, communication frequently breaks down. Basically, this means that when students are informed directly about the new culture, it's easier for them to be immersed in it. Number 5. People with power are least aware of its existence, while those with less power are most aware of its existence. White educators have the authority to establish what is to be considered truth, regardless of the opinions of the people of color. The latter are aware of this fact. Continuing important concepts, we have communication blocks. Delpit raises the question, how can communication blocks exist when both parties truly believe that they have the same aims? Delpit suggests that people need to identify and give voice to alternative worldviews. She suggests that the issues exist due to the culture of power. The 5 aspects of culture of power identify the specific concerns which are prevalent in terms of education amongst white people and people of color. The major concern here is that families want their children to have the same education and opportunities, but the dilemma is how can this be achieved when both parties have such strong opinions and distinct viewpoints. It really comes down to society as a whole having to move away from the norm and historical ways of doing things and embrace change, which will be a more suitable approach that will take into consideration the diversity between cultures. The final important concept to be discussed is how language plays a role in the classroom. Delpit makes a strong case on how language plays an important role in the classroom. She identifies that African American students typically need a more authoritative figure that uses direct language similar to the type of language used at home. Under these conditions, they have an easier time following and understanding instruction. Teachers who present directions as questions do so in an attempt to somewhat diminish the power that they hold in the classroom. This works well with white students from middle and upper class families, as they understand that the questions are actually polite, disguised requests. In other words, they are accustomed to this type of language at home. African American students, on the other hand, understand the questions as questions. For example, "Can you sit down?" poses the option between yes or no. As a result, students may respond with "I don't want to." Due to this, African American students tend to not do what the teachers ask because of misinterpretation of language and are therefore labeled as problematic or lacking intelligence. Now we move on to response to text. I think I forgot to mention this earlier, but my name is Yalen. So a point from the article that I resonated with was that the teacher explains content too fast. This meant that the child who did not come to school already primed with what is to be presented would be labeled as needing remedial instruction from day one. When I started school, I didn't speak a lot of English because the language spoken in my household was Spanish. The teacher gave me a lot of remedial work and support because she thought I was slow, which was not the case. I just didn't have the same English knowledge base as the rest of the students, and I was not fully fluent in English until 2nd grade. The extra work and support moved at a slow pace and was tedious, so I got bored and resisted doing the work, which enforced the idea that I was slow in my teacher's mind. After a while of being completely immersed in an English-speaking classroom and watching TV in English, I started to know how to speak and write English better, and I eventually got onto the same level as the rest of the other students. The point I'm trying to make is that the teacher falsely recognized my issues with classwork as me being unable to do it, when it was actually that I lacked the familiarity with the language. Finally, we move on to the end of discussion questions. Does the disconnect between students and teachers still exist? If so, what can be done today to help teachers and students understand each other? Think about what you learned through the Delpit article and your experiences in the classroom. What would you change as a teacher, or how would you approach this issue? How can we stop training teachers to expect less from certain children? Everybody has an implicit bias that we are all unaware of regarding people from different races, cultures, class, and gender. And lastly, what are some ways that teachers can recognize, acknowledge, and value the cultural strengths that students bring to the school? Okay, and that's it. Bye-bye, friends. Hope you're healthy. Wash your hands. Yeah.